more on what happened today, we want to go out live now to attorney Nicole DeBorde, who's joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Nicole, thanks so much for being here. There's been so much that has happened, but I first want to begin with the jurors who paid a visit to Moselle, the property where Maggie and Paul were killed. What were your thoughts on that?
You know, I think it's really interesting that the defense really pushed as hard as they did to make this happen. They must have a very strong belief that seeing the distances between the locations, being able to visualize the scene for themselves will really clarify some of what they've been saying as their defensive theory. And so I think that it's interesting, too, that the prosecution pushed so hard against it. So it's good, I think, that the jurors got to experience it firsthand and decide for themselves.
Yeah, and these are some visuals here of the Moselle property where those jurors were paying the visit today and touring. And then afterwards, of course, we heard from the prosecution. It was a very lengthy closing statement today. What were your thoughts on what the prosecution had to say ahead of the defense speaking tomorrow?
The prosecution makes a very compelling case, really the strongest points of which are that Murdaugh is the one who had the motivation to do these crimes, and that it doesn't make any sense that there's anybody else that could have done it. On the flip side, we're going to hear a very strong closing argument, I suspect, tomorrow from the defense team to say you really have to believe that he is some different kind of level of evil to have done these things directly looking straight at his wife and child. And the state's case was not well investigated. I think that is going to be what they argue tomorrow.
And Nicole, I want to pull up a tweet here. This is from Avery Wilkes, who is a reporter with the Post and Courier in South Carolina, talking about the length of the prosecution, speaking during closing arguments today, saying it went on for about 3 hours. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously the jury has a lot to unpack with all of the details that have come from this case so far, but just for taking into account that it's that lengthy of a closing statement from the prosecution.
Generally speaking, as a trial lawyer, I say any story that takes a long time to tell is problematic. And so that the prosecution's tale, if you will, takes that long to unravel before the jury, it does seem to be a problem on the one hand for the prosecution. On the other, this was a very long trial. As mentioned earlier, this has been 6 weeks. There have been a lot of details for these jurors to go over, and the jury charge, no doubt, is complex, and the prosecutor really had points that they wanted to cover, and it took a while to do so. So I think, you know, it could have potentially been shorter. Generally, that's not a great sign that it takes so long for the person telling the story. On the other hand, it's a complicated case.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. Then, of course, tomorrow morning, we're going to hear from the defense in their closing statements. What do you think we can expect from that, especially after the jurors paid that visit to the Moselle property today?
I think that the defense will be saying, you know, look, exactly what we've been telling you throughout our presentation of this case is true. The distances are really not what the investigators who testified made them out to be. And the scene is much more like what the defense has argued it is and was, and the jurors have now seen it for themselves. I also think that they will continue to beat the drum that they've been beating throughout the trial, which is that this case was not investigated well, and that there were details that were left unanswered that really could have been answered had the investigators done the things that they normally do in terms of collecting evidence and identifying very important details in reports. And really, we just are missing some of that information even now as the state has wrapped up and argued and the case is coming to a close.
And then with just the extent of all the detail in this case, so much to unpack for jurors. I know it's always hard to put a number on it, but in terms of how long it might take the jury to deliberate on this case, what are you anticipating?
Oh, goodness. I have stopped trying to guess what jurors are up to and how long it will take them to figure out the answers to their questions a long time ago. I've seen verdicts that are in favor of the prosecution come very quickly, and I have seen them take a very long time, and I've also seen the reverse to be the case for the defense side. So I just can't even begin to guess how long it's going to take them. There are a lot of details here. The arguments will be long, I think, for the defense, and we're long for the prosecution, so they have a lot to sort through. If they take the time to answer all of the questions that are coming up throughout these arguments, they could be out for a while. On the other hand, they may have sat through enough of this to know what they think and be ready to deliver a verdict more quickly. Really hard to say.
Yeah, and Nicole, you bring up a lot of really great points in this conversation. Is there anything else that stands out to you ahead of the defense speaking tomorrow that you'd like to touch on that maybe we haven't addressed already?
I think that you've really hit on the key points that I'm certainly wondering about, and I'm eager to see exactly what the defense has to say. You know, at the beginning of this case, it seemed like really an impossible challenge for the defense, but the defense, in my opinion, has done a very good job of highlighting investigative problems and highlighting potential reasons why the state has not achieved what they need to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. On the other hand, it's such a heinous and emotional case. I think that that is certainly something that the prosecution has going for it, as well as what they argued in their closing argument, which is who else would have had the motive to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so interesting and so devastating at the same time to follow this case from start to finish. And I know so many people have had their eyes glued to it. So really great to hear from you. Nicole DeBorde joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Great experience and expertise behind all of your answers.
Super. Well, thanks again for having me.